here's how you look like a genius in a high-risk, high-consequence environment. I'm going to give you an example of the planning that we do and present to you a scenario that shows the difference between making decisions before they occur and waiting till it happens in the moment. As a SEAL team, we do not have organic assets, meaning we don't have helicopters that are ours. We rely upon other people to provide them for us. We don't have our own armor. We don't have tanks or any heavy vehicles with weaponry that you would want to bring to bear. So we rely on other people largely to get us to where we go and do our job. Traditionally, helicopters are how we get places in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they present a perfect example of the importance of contingency planning. Traditionally, helicopters fly in flights of 2, and we want 4 because you have a limited amount of cubic space and a limited amount of weight that you can use. So we'll plan an operation for 72 hours. We send the operation to higher authority for approval, and they come back and they say, yes, you're approved to go. They provide us execute authority. We brief it to ourselves, and the helicopters land. The way we work, or the environment that we prefer to work in, is under the cover of darkness because it provides for me a tactical and technological advantage. So I have a limited amount of time where I feel comfortable operating. 4 helicopters arrive, you load up the helicopters, you're prepared to execute and go to your objective, and one of the helicopters breaks. What do? It depends. Are you prepared to look like a genius because you contingency planned and you know what your minimum force required is, you know what your minimum capability is, and you brief that so that situation presents itself and you make a decision and you move on with the combat operation? It requires 0% of your available hard drive space. Versus the individual who does not forecast and think ahead. The helicopters show up, one of them breaks, and now you're sitting there with helicopters spinning, burning gas, as the sun is just ticking its clock away until it rises on the eastern horizon. And you have to figure out, how many people do I need? What skill sets do I need? Where is everybody? One looks like a split-second decision, which it was not. It was following a branch diagram. And the other one is a leader struggling in a decision-based environment. We do the same type of thought process when it comes to communication. What are we going to do if we lose the ability to communicate to higher authority? What should they expect of us if we do, in fact, lose communication? Medical, that's another good one. If you start leaking red hydraulic fluid, it's a pretty good idea to have somebody there who knows how to stop it. Can you imagine how bad it feels to have somebody that you literally love next to you bleeding out, and you're trying to figure out what your plan is going to be to get a helicopter to them, versus having planned and briefed with the medevac platform multiple points along the way, so it's a decision that has already made itself. Another great example is what we call QRF, which stands for Quick Reaction Force. And think of it as picking up the red phone and trying to get a hold of Batman and saying, hey, I need some help. And we operate in small units. 16 people is a pretty good size for us to go into the field, which, comparison to how the conventional military works, that's a microscopic force. So before they will let us go out into the field, we have to show that we have coordinated with, communicated with, and alerted a larger force that can come help us if we need help. And again, I'll present to you a situation where you have removed the time-sensitive nature, the consequences, and the risk in your decision-making process versus trying to make it in the moment. Sometimes, when you're just walking around minding your own business with your machine gun, not trying to bother anybody, people shoot at you. And sometimes, people get hurt and killed. And imagine being in charge of 16 people, and you're on an objective, and it's a complex problem, and somebody gets hurt. And you have to start thinking to yourself, do I have enough guys to complete the mission? And then somebody else gets hurt. Should I call for help now? I'm going to wait it out. This situation looks bad, but I'm going to see how it plays out. And as time goes on, the situation gets worse. Versus in an environment where there is no one shooting at you, you determine precisely what your minimum manning is, what your minimum criteria is. So in the heat of the moment, when those criteria are met, the decision is already made. And then what are you doing as a leader in that moment if the decision has already been made for you? You're leading. You cannot lead if you're trying to complete complex problems while looking down. The job of the leader in the SEAL teams is to be looking up and out, to lead the team throughout the battle space, regardless of what happens. Decision-making and leadership only gets better if you practice. And quite frankly, my mind is blown in the business world, specifically on the leadership side of the house, how tied it is to position, to abbreviation on a business card, or job title. That confers leadership. And people wait until they get into a leadership position to start practicing it. To me, it's the same as attempting to get your driver's license without ever learning how to drive a car. But you just go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you sign up for the test, and when it doesn't go well, how could you possibly be surprised? Leadership and decision-making are professional licenses, and they need to be treated as such. So when you learned how to drive, you found a mentor. That mentor taught you how to drive, and they let you make mistakes. They didn't let you come off the rails, but they let you make a mistake so you could learn from it. And eventually, at some point, you had enough experience to go test for your license. You tested for your license, you successfully passed, and now you're driving a vehicle on your own. And why people approach leadership specifically, or decision-making specifically, in any terms other than that, is totally baffling to me. Because when failure occurs, that's the root cause of it. If you're a leader in your organization, which every person in this room is a leader, either by job title or by example, you have to facilitate an environment in your organization where people can practice. If you do not allow that, how are they going to get any better?